Our next performer is our friend Jack. Jack submitted this last month and I couldn't figure it out technically, so I'm really happy that we're able to put it in tonight's show. It's, like Jack, sort of a sad, heartwarming, funny story. Enjoy.
Hi there, guys. It's me again. Um, I'd like to share with you another story about something that happened to me earlier in my life. This time, when I was about 9 years old, I was at primary school. I mentioned in previous videos that I went to a quite strange primary school. It was very small. The head teacher ran it like as his own kind of personal little empire. He was a small man with a small empire, like so many small men. Yeah, so one lunchtime, I was hanging out in the playground with my friends. I say friends, I didn't really have any friends. They were more like the kids who bullied me. But I hung around with them because I wanted them to like me. So yeah, long story short, with my friends hanging around in the playground at lunchtime, and then one of the group came over with some news that Wendy, who was the playground assistant, we called them dinner ladies, was pregnant. He said, "Guys, Wendy's pregnant." We're like, "Wow, wow!" Like this was big news. I mean, we're 9 years old. There's not really any other news, so this was big. And we're like, "Oh, scandal!" And Benji, who was like the kind of ringleader, the leader of the gang, kind of thing, he said, "I wonder who she had it off with." Had it off, having it off was like how 9 year olds in suburban London in 1997 referred to having sex, just to keep everyone in the picture. Um, Benji had an older brother, you see. His older brother was about 12, so kind of knew about this kind of stuff. A bit of a veteran, knew the ropes. It's where we got most of our sex education from at that time. So we laughed because that was a really funny thing to say. I wonder who she had it off with. And not quite sure why he asked that, because whoever it was that Wendy had it off with, we probably didn't know her. Like, we only knew each other. We only knew other 9 year olds, and 9 year olds usually haven't developed the kind of the skills and the charm to have it off with anyone. So it probably wasn't anyone we knew. We didn't know any of Wendy's lovers. Still don't. Um, but Benji asked this question, and I wanted to join in the banter because, as I said, I was desperate to be liked. So I said, because unfortunately, apart from Benji's older brother, the only other source of sex education that I had at that time was the nativity play. So I said, well, maybe she was a virgin. I mean, in hindsight, I think that was probably quite an uneducated and ignorant comment, because she probably wasn't a virgin. But I knew that it was possible to get pregnant as a virgin from the nativity play. Although I've thought about it over the years, and between you and me, part of me even doubts that the original Mary from the nativity play was actually a virgin. I think there was probably a simpler explanation for what happened back in ancient Judea. But I don't want to go into that, just in case that hasn't occurred to Joseph. So anyway, I said, maybe she's a virgin, and they all looked at me horrified because what I'd said wasn't appropriate. And Benji said, which, as a 9 year old, I mean, you dreaded hearing that. You dreaded hearing that. That was a sign that something you had said had crossed a moral line. Horrible, especially from the kid you wanted to like. And then the next thing they said was even worse. This other kid, Anil, who was like the kind of the cackling, cackling, laughing boy, you know, the Iago, the Richard Hammond, the Mike Pompeo of the group, said, "I'm telling," which even more than was the kind of thing to hear that would strike your veins cold as a 9-year-old, because it meant not only had you crossed the line, but that they were going to snitch on you for crossing the line. So Anil went to tell Wendy what I had said, but of course he couldn't say what I'd said without saying that they had said the first comment, the having it off comment. So what he did was, to get around this, he told Wendy that I'd said both of those things. So obviously this poor woman, she's just got pregnant, and she's informed by one of the 9-year-olds that she looks after every day, that they've been speculating about the provenance of her unborn child. And I've tried to put myself over the years in Wendy's head at this moment, because I mean, she works with 9-year-olds. I imagine she hears a lot of stupid stuff and some cute stuff. And I've tried to think, is there any way that's cute? And I think probably not. She was probably just as disgusted. Because as I said, I was the small, unpopular child. Probably just, why is this child talking about my sex life? So she took it in what I can only describe as poor grace, and went directly to the headmaster and told him what I'd said. The headmaster was furious, gave me a dressing down. Of course, I'd said one of the two things, but I couldn't admit that I'd said my part, which on reflection was the less horrible part, without kind of admitting. So I denied saying either of the things. So the headmaster responded in a completely fair way by banning my whole class, from break time until I admitted it. I mean, if any of you know 9-year-olds, they don't care about anything really apart from break time. Having their break time is literally their world. So I became even more of a pariah among my peers, because just admit it, then we can all have break time. But I didn't want to admit it because I hadn't said it, or I hadn't said all of it. I didn't want to be in trouble. So after school that evening, I said to my mum, "Oh, they said I'm saying all this stuff, but I didn't say it. I pretended I didn't say any of it." My mum said, "Well, the one thing you mustn't do is admit to something that you didn't do. And that's wrong." So, okay, mum. But obviously, I had to go back to school the next day, and playtime was still banned until I don't know what I was thinking, whether I'd become some kind of like Henry Fonda in 12 Angry Men character, like one by one winning over my peers until they all believed me. But no, none of them did. But this went on for 3 days. 3 days my class's break time was cancelled, to try to put pressure on me to admit having said all this stuff, which they thought I'd said anyway and wouldn't accept it. It was very much a kangaroo court. So yeah, eventually I did admit that I'd said this. Got in really bad trouble, including with my mum, who was really angry with me for admitting something that I hadn't done. So I was really a sort of a rose caught between lots of Kafkaesque injustice. It was pretty tough. But I guess the key takeaway for me from this is that if you raise children, if you have children, or if you're planning on raising children, don't raise your children with such a blinkered understanding of sex education that they take religious metaphors as truth about sex, sexual habits, sexual unions, sexual carnal affairs, because they can make one mistake one day based on the sort of religious sexual understanding of the world, and it would it can really haunt them for the rest of their life, and I think I'm testament to that.